Hello and welcome to episode 325 of Total Saints podcast. Before we start, a huge thank you to our TSP patron community. We've had some new people join us since the last episode, so a huge welcome to AJ Reardon and John Holman, who have joined our Bobby Stokes tier. And thanks to Jono out in Australia on the Gold Coast, who upgraded from the Bobby Stokes tier to the Mick Channon tier. So thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate your support. Today, as the more observant of you will already have noticed, Martin is not here again. So you stuck with me, Glen Delacour, writer of the blog League One -10. And today I'm joined by Steve Grant, owner of SaintsWeb, and George Rees-Julian from the Daily Echo. It's Alfie's birthday, I believe. That's and more importantly, it's his girlfriend's birthday, and that's why he's not here. I was going to say lots to go through on this episode, but it's all been a little bit slow. But we do have some bits to talk about. So first up, we've had an exit, we've had an arrival, and we've had a renewal. Mentioned it. I did a post-mortem on Kamaldeen Sulemana's Saints career the last time we were on here, so no one needs to hear me do that again. That deal has gone through. Steve, anything to add regarding the end of Kamaldeen Sulemana's Saints career?
I guess the only thing really to say is, what an extraordinary bit of negotiating to get that fee. I think, because when there are rumours, sort of about a couple of weeks after the end of the season, and Atalanta had just appointed Ivan Juric and he was interested in taking him, I think a lot of us would have said, well, if the number's got a 1 at the front, then just bite your arm off regardless of what it is. And
15
yet,
quid.
Yeah, somehow we've ended up with a starting point of £18 million, which I think is absolutely extraordinary.
Was it £18 million or 18 million euros?
It might be euros.
It might be euros. Okay, so in which case, 15, 16 million quid? So that's still only a loss of about 6 million over 2.5 years. When, frankly, his performances should have justified a much bigger drop on that. But I guess it's one of those things where you kind of say fair play to Rasmus Ankersen for squeezing that money out of the Italians, but at the end of the day, it was his transfer dealing to pay the exorbitant club record fee in the first place. So only kind of a slight pat on the back, I guess.
Yeah, £8 or euros, I'd have taken 18 million biscuits, I think. It makes no difference to me. On the face of it, it's an extraordinary amount of money. And the one thing we should say, in all seriousness, is that Ivan Juric has done us a good bit, done us a good turn there by giving us that amount of money. But he's not been very well. So get well soon to Ivan Juric, and hopefully he can get on with the task of getting something out of Kamaldeen Sulemana for next season. So George, onto the more positive. We've had a player join. Damion Downs has joined from Cologne. They were in the Bundesliga 2 last season, so he swapped the second tier in Germany for the second tier in England. Based on what you know, what you've heard, he's very young. Where do you see him fit him in? Do you think he'll be a starter automatically, or will he be a squad option, etc., etc.?
I'm not too sure he'll be a starter. He may end up being a starter by the end of the season. I don't see him dropping straight in as a starter because Cameron Archer, Ross Stewart will have had more pre-season. Damion Downs hasn't even been training with the squad yet. He'll join up when they go to Girona tonight or tomorrow, whenever it starts. I think it starts on Monday, so they may well be travelling over today. I'm not too sure. From what I watched quite a bit to do analysis piece on him. He does seem an interesting player. He's he's not pretty big. He is massive, and he is quite quick. But there's sometimes where he runs through on goal, the ball sort of gets stuck underneath him, and I can't quite work out if he's rapid or if there's just sometimes he's against a slightly slower centre back, and it makes him look quick. He's for his height, he's not massively amazing in the air, but he has scored a couple of goals from headers. But what he is good at, from what I've seen, is picking up good positions in the box, and he works really hard as well. There was a couple of goals where he looked a bit rough and he maybe lost the ball, didn't have quite the best shot, and it gets blocked or he gets tackled, but he's then straight away moving around and delaying his run into the box and waiting for someone to cut it back to him and to score a goal. And from what we've seen, me and Alfie and Adam have been able to go to these behind closed doors games, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. Cutting the ball back seems like it's going to be something that Southampton want to do. Yeah. So if that is how they do manage to use him, I think he could be decent. I think it's interesting that he has got a team promoted and then wants to come into the Championship. I don't know what that sort of says about where Saints are as a project and what they can sell to players, because that's pretty decent to leave your boyhood club to come to Saints when you could go and play in the Bundesliga is an impressive coup. I want to see how he does adjust to English football. He's got Joshua Quashie, who he already knows, played against him a lot and played with him in the Germany under-20s. So that should make the adjustment period a bit easier, and English is going to be no issue for him either, spending 8 years in the United States. So yeah, I think it's a solid signing, and probably a sign maybe of where the transfer activity is going to go when it finally starts happening.
It's interesting that you touched on it, Joshua Quashie as well. They're similar sort of physical specimens, aren't they? They're both massive. They're both, on the quick side. So that's obviously an area that's been identified as, where we needed strengthening, and it's kind of hard to argue with that, I guess. Steve, do you know sort of like much about this guy? Maybe what he's done for the Americans and internationally and things like that.
Yeah, not a huge amount, I must admit. The last year or certainly last season, I was kind of sort of struggling to maintain interest in one league, which was not particularly pleasant at the best of times. So didn't really pay an awful lot of notice to what was going on in the second tier over in Germany, other than there was always the occasional sort of entertainment in that division, because for the last 8 years Hamburg have been down there, who obviously massive club, former European champions, and basically every season seem to find new and interesting ways of not getting promoted. But even they managed to go up this time around. So there's been very little of interest really in that second division. In the last year or so, but certainly his kind of physical attributes, as you say, do point to us identifying something. Which, if we all remember back to Russell Martin's Monday Night Football appearance, the question was, what would you have done differently in the transfer market if you'd had the opportunity last summer? And he basically said, the physical profile of players, we needed to get more strength and more athleticism, and Quashie and Downs seem to fit that bill perfectly, I would imagine. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fit in. As George says, I don't think either will be immediate starters, although Quashie's obviously been involved from the start at least. But we'll see how it goes. But you would like to think that these are kind of the first of perhaps 5 or 6 reasonably sort of decent signings in terms of being first team ready. Because we still think that we're probably going to sell probably at least that many, if not more, between now and the end of August. So obviously we want to trim the squad a little bit, but you still need to have sort of maintain that strength in depth. And I think our first 11 could still do with a little bit of improvement, if only for people coming in fresh without the kind of hangover and PTSD, if you like, of last season.
I think with Downs, it's the way Will still wants to play. He wants to have a sort of like relatively big and quick central striker, and without Downs, we'd be relying on Ross Stewart, who, as we all know, has played about 3 games over the last 3 years. So I largely agree with what you both said there about Downs being a starter. I see Ross Stewart as the starter, to be honest, to begin with. But obviously you need a squad. You're not going to get 46 games out of Ross Stewart. So you need a squad. On the other hand, Dragan Solak mentioned that we were signing more looking at three areas to improve the team. And so I do wonder if the two new signings are both earmarked to start games, pretty quickly. I largely think that they won't right from the start, but I don't think it'll be too long before we see lots from these two guys. So hopefully Downs hits the ground running, and as a striker, as we all know, it's all about confidence, and hopefully he makes a good start, and then we'll see. It'll turn out to be a bit of a bargain for the amount of money that we've paid for him. But we've been here before with centre forwards, and it hasn't always been spectacularly successful. But hopefully this one is. But so that's the player leaving and the player arriving, and we've had a player renewed, who's renewed a new contract. That, of course, is Jack Stevens, who signed a new 3-year deal, captain of the club. It's certainly divided opinion amongst the fan base. For me, the main thing that sticks a little bit is the length of the contract. It's 3 years, taking him from age 31 up to age 34. Steve, what's your take on all that?
Well, I'm surprised. That's for sure. Given, last season for him, I would imagine he would put that down as a bit of a disaster. 2 red cards, missing 9 games through suspension, I think it was in the end, and just not fulfilling the role of club captain in that sense, really, in terms of the sort of taking responsibility and doing the right things on the pitch, I suppose. I think we've all got our opinions on him as a player, and we'll come on to discussing the recent behind closed doors games, but I assume we've all seen the clip of the Valenciennes goal, where
he doesn't help himself, does he?
No, it just feels like lessons aren't being learned by anybody. There's no monetary value to maintain with Jack at his age. So it's not like giving him a new contract is kind of retaining some kind of book value for us that we're then going to turn a profit on in a year's time, because frankly, it's just not going to happen. The only thing I can kind of think of with the length of the contract is that I believe last season he was one of our highest earners. So I wonder whether the new extended contract is on reduced terms, so it perhaps just pays him out the same amount, but just over an extra 2 years. Maybe that's kind of wishful thinking on my part. Maybe he doesn't kind of have the self-awareness to accept that scenario. But maybe it is just a kind of pushing a bit of the money, sort of kicking the can down the road a little bit, I suppose. But look, every manager that has had him sort of working under them has always said they value his sort of input in the dressing room, on the training ground, this, that, and the other, which is all fine. But you could have a non-playing member of staff doing that. And
none of the managers who have left us have ever tried to buy him afterwards, have they?
Well, funny that, isn't it? But no, I think the leadership thing. Yes, certainly last season we lacked leaders, and we have done for a while. That's not a new thing. But given the lack of leadership that we've visibly seen in 2 out of the last 3 seasons, to then keep the guy that's kind of been a leader of people that look leaderless does seem a little bit strange. But hey ho, we'll see. It might be that come May he's one of the centre backs named in the Championship Team of the Year, and we're all made to look really stupid. But I think I would argue we've probably seen enough to think that this is that. I don't know. Is it a sentimental appointment, a sentimental contract award from people in the club who get on really well with him on a personal level? Who knows? But it's certainly not a contract I would have been offering. That's for sure.
Yeah. So George, it's an opinion really. I'm not expecting you to know what do you think was in it for the club?
Well, I think
from their perspective.
I think the main one is that leadership side of things. In the 2 games against Gillingham and Valenciennes, obviously there's no fans there, so you can hear who's actually speaking on the pitch. And Jack is actually one of the only players who does speak on the pitch. Southampton have been incredibly quiet when they played against Gillingham. Every single Gillingham player was shouting and screaming. Obviously, they were against the ball, so you're kind of putting players into possession, whereas Saints are more in possession. So perhaps you're not going to be as loud. But Jack was one of the players, with Aaron Ramsdale as well, especially when Moses Sesse came on. Aaron Ramsdale was coaching him through the game and basically telling the players against Valenciennes that they weren't at the standard. They weren't doing well enough, and he was constantly sort of berating them for that. But Jack's one of the ones who you can actually hear on the pitch. Ryan Manning's another one, and Joshua Korshi's probably the only other one, which is quite impressive considering he's still getting to know his teammates. He's pretty loud. So I think if you've got one player in the dressing room who is loud, to go and get rid of them then would be a mistake, because you simply just need people who are loud. And you can say that Jack hasn't actually led with his actions, getting sent off as many times as he has, the mistakes he's made. But I think it's the other side of things that you can't necessarily replace. And the length of contract is surprising for me as well, because, as you say, he'll be 34 by the time it comes to an end. But the more I've thought about it, maybe it's not too surprising as well, because if you look through the club, they've got players who've come through the academy or who've been there for a long time. Obviously, Adam Lallana now on the coaching staff. You look through the academy and it's stacked with former players coaching, and Southampton clearly think they need players or people at the club who know the club, and Jack's been here for ages, so he definitely fits into that box. So keeping him around for another 3 years, they probably see that as just continuing to do that, having more people at the club who understand the Southampton way, as they like to call it.
Yeah, I looked at the if you look at the profile of the rest of the central defenders that we've got, they're all 20, 21, 22. The only other experienced one is Jan Bednarek, who's widely expected to leave. And I can't help but think that would have had some sort of bearing on it as well, because it would be unlikely to go into any season. I mean, I don't know, personally, just on ability alone, I'd pick Taylor Harwood-Bellis and Ronnie Edwards, and that would be an incredibly young, centre back pairing. I know Will Steele has already said, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and that's the way he looks at it. So maybe that's not a factor, but I think if we'd signed someone like, I don't know, Ben Mee was available on a free, for argument's sake. I think if we'd signed someone like that, or looked interested in signing someone like that, then maybe this contract award wouldn't have happened. But it has, and fair play to him, and good luck to him really, and let's hope he has a better season than last time and brings the leadership that was somewhat lacking in the way he played last season. But so on to the pre-season friendlies. So the first one was obviously it was like 2 separate 45-minute games against Eastleigh, where we completely changed the team at half time. 1-0 down straight away, and it felt like football had never been away. And, we eventually, after a turgid first half, got a penalty which Adam Armstrong stuck away. Cameron Archer scored in the second half. The second half was much quicker paced, with Jay Robinson and, intriguingly, Kuryu Matsuki sort of standing out in that particular game. People always talk about sort of like these games being about fitness, these preseason games being about fitness, which of course they are. But I kind of think, especially with a new manager, every opportunity to step on the pitch should be an opportunity for you to put yourself forward. And I just sort of felt someone like Jay Robinson, the manager would have been thinking about him and his performance after the game, rather than thinking about someone who just jogged through 45 minutes. And I thought in that first half particularly, it was spectacularly sort of average. I don't know, maybe, I mean, am I expecting too much, or is it wrong to expect players to, sort of like be out to impress in a preseason game?
No,
I mean,
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, as you say, brand new manager coming in, and you know that there is a huge squad, so you know that
yeah,
there is basically a chopping board, and you've got to make sure that you're not on that essentially. And yeah, that first half there were a lot of players, and I mean, let's be honest, it's a lot of players that we kind of expected might be putting those sort of performances in first up, because we saw it for the majority of last season. But yeah, that first half was turgid, and there would have been, you would like to think that that kind of gave the manager a little bit of a clue as to the mentality of some of them.
yeah,
Maybe there's just kind of still that weariness and the obviously having been chased around for 38 games last season, as I said just now, a little bit of PTSD from the whole experience, and maybe the project is a little bit bigger in terms of the amount of overhaul that's needed. I think in terms of the base quality, I think the squad that we have, I mean, obviously you'd remove a few players to chop it down a little bit, but overall the quality is more than good enough to get promoted again. The problem is that it's obviously not good enough to stay up.
yeah,
So I think we ideally want to be going into the season with a little bit of a refresh. Players who are mentally right, first and foremost, physically right, which by the sound of it, that's been a very key focus on this summer so far, which is good to hear, given that obviously
yeah,
extra 8 games, championship can be a bit of a slog. But yeah, that, like, just taking that first half, I mean the two halves of that Eastleigh game into isolation, just absolute chalk and cheese between the two in terms of the kind of the collective attitude and the kind of, I don't want to say desire, because it's such a sort of nonsense thing to question players giving a toss, because at the end of the day they're all being paid to be there. You don't get to where they are without having that desire. So there are all kinds of factors that go into this, but yeah, just the kind of, not even, is it enthusiasm, just energy levels in that second half, where you had players like Robinson. But I think it is players like Robinson who will make the team tick in these scenarios, because his movement is so sharp, and he's got that youthful exuberance where he's not been tainted by any of the nonsense over the last 3
no,
years. He's coming in completely fresh. Like even Dibbling, you saw second half of last season, he was being weighed down by the weight of combination of expectation and other teams having finally done some homework on him. And yet someone like Robinson, completely fresh, comes in. Him and Matsuki were just buzzing around, and all of a sudden you are making a National League team look like the level that they are. Whereas in the first half, we didn't really do that. We thought that we would just be able to maintain possession and get ourselves around the pitch and beat them quite comfortably, which obviously we did a year ago. And obviously that gives people a reference point. Well, under Russell Martin, we beat them 7-1. But yeah, Eastleigh are a better squad now than they were a year ago.
yeah,
But I mean, they're still a tier 5 team. And you would expect a team that is kind of bottom end of Premier League, upper end of the Championship, should be turning over those sort of sides. Even first game of pre-season, a lot handier than we did in the end.
yeah. So once that game was out of the way, we've gone into behind closed doors territory for games at Staplewood against Gillingham and Valenciennes. And now we're off to Spain for 2 more behind closed doors friendlies. Just as a general point, Steve, before we get on to the friendlies that we've played, I know you've been partial to a pre-season trip in the past, particularly when Saints were set something up in Europe. What's your opinion of the seemingly growing trend of having behind closed doors friendlies instead of proper games that fans can go to?
Oh, it's absolute bullshit. Absolute nonsense. Because I mean, clubs like up and down the country are doing this now, and I get that they want to be able to prepare for the season without too many prying eyes. But they did this during COVID, didn't they? Where all the messaging was, "Oh, we can't. We're all really missing you. Looking forward to seeing you back soon." Blah blah blah. And then as soon as everybody's back in the stadium, it's like, right, ticket prices up 20%, and the clubs were then basically just taking the piss out of us again. And this feels like a kind of almost an extension of that, whereby on one hand the club is saying how much it values its support, especially the travelling support, and yet on the other they're denying us the opportunity to go to somewhere completely different where we've never seen our team play before, and have the opportunity of combining that with a holiday and things like that. Where, like in the past, like I've seen Saints in pre-season in like Sweden, Switzerland, France, possibly one in Italy as well back in the day. So it's not like we haven't done these tours before where there's been fans present, and it also gives like the sort of local communities of where we turn up some level of interest during pre-season. Like the Swedish ones were always great because obviously we had Swedish players in the team, two Svenssons, prime example, and as a result you get loads of local interest. Big crowds come out. Like we played this non-league side in the middle of a forest in Sweden, and I mean the game actually got abandoned with about 5 minutes to go because of a thunderstorm. But yeah, there was about 8,000 people there. It was mental. I don't think the village even had that many people living there. So the interest is always there in these games, and I think the club have got to do a bit better. I think on these sort of things. They've always been slow to announce things, again because basically they don't want people there, and yeah, so yeah, slow to announce things, and obviously now ultimately it doesn't really matter when they announce them because if they're playing them behind closed doors, nobody can get in. It's just not great. I mean, you see all the like the bigger clubs going off around the world having these massive tours and playing games in front of 80,000. They're making millions of pounds out of it. You've got to find a way of kind of plugging that gap, and part of that is you build interest in the club in other regions.
Yeah.
So I mean that was the idea of obviously the game in Izmir a couple of years ago, the game in Shanghai we played, didn't we? And Macau back in, what was that, 2018 I think that was, and yeah, the way to grow a fan.
The Austria trip with Ralph as well, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, that one too. Yeah. And yeah, this is the way that you grow a fan base in sort of outside your own kind of real catchment area. Is you have games like this, and suddenly people take an interest. And yeah, we seem to have kind of missed that point pretty significantly over the last few years. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I can't argue with any of that. I mean, I can understand it from the manager's point of view, wanting to have less pressure on the games and not have to think about maybe there's less pressure to get a result in games if there's no one watching. But no, I think that's far outweighed by all the points that you've made there. So you and I have seen about 2 minutes of highlights of the along with everybody else of the behind the closed doors friendlies that we've had. And but George has got a special ticket, obviously. So you've seen the 2 hour games against Gillingham and the 2 against Valenciennes. So Gillingham 1-0 and 3-1 goals across the 2 games from Archer, Stewart, Dibbling, and can't remember who got the other one.
Matsuki.
And Valenciennes, it was Archer and Armstrong again, along with the talking point of that was, as mentioned earlier, was the mistake by Captain Jack, who went back to Russell Martin days and got caught with the ball in his own penalty area. So yeah, George, what have you made of it all? I'm thinking particularly style of play, formations, and the like, pointers to how we're going to play this season. You know, what's your verdict on what you've seen so far?
Well, my verdict is I'm surprised they even got 2 minutes worth of worth of highlights for each game because not too much
good.
happened really. The Valenciennes game, obviously Will Stills come out and explained that the players did 8-9k the day before. So that was very much like you can't really expect players to do much when they are knackered, and they did that on purpose to make them knackered and see how they cope, see how they can play when their legs aren't really working anymore.
Idea, that, I thought.
Yeah, I quite like that as an idea, although I'm worried if maybe they then go to Spain and they can't do as much fitness there in the warm weather, but I'm sure they've got all the sports science people to work that out. The game against Gillingham felt much better than the game against Eastleigh. There was an improvement. Yeah. They scored 4 goals compared to the 2. Cameron Archer's obviously got 3 and 3. He's scoring goals, which is what he needs to be doing. He still doesn't do a great deal other than score goals, but I don't think that's his game at all. That's still about
what
him.
We expect from him, I think.
Yeah, like
really, isn't it?
He just wants him to run in behind, get in the box, and score goals. And if he does that, happy days. I think as I touched on already, the main thing I've picked up on is one, how much he wants the players to get down the wings, how much he wants the fullbacks to get forward. There was a couple of times where James Bree was almost as a striker. That's how far forward he was going, and even coming inside. Ryan Fraser, quite interestingly, he's been playing through the middle. I know he did that against Eastleigh, but he feels even more like a number 10 in the 2 games since. And I don't necessarily mind him as an option there. He's probably not a winger anymore. He's probably lost a lot of his pace. So if he is going to stay around and be an experienced player, chuck him through the middle. Why not? They're quite light in central positions. Jay Robinson's been impressive, although he got very tired by the end of the week. I think it's because he's still very young. And I don't know how much they can rely on him to be someone who plays every week. We saw what happened to Tyler Diblin, didn't we? Where his energy levels just dropped off rapidly. He had to be rested quite a few times, pulled out of the England squad in the summer because he ultimately needed a rest. The centre-backs have been all right. They've not really been tested. I enjoyed Nathan Wood's performance against Valenciennes, got into a bit of a scrap with one of their strikers. I forget his name now, but they were having a battle all game, and I think their striker had left something on him, so Nathan ran straight back into him, and all of a sudden they were pulling players apart, and that was sort of a theme for the Valenciennes game. There was a couple of times where Kai Sander almost had to pull his former teammates and his current teammates apart. That was probably the only interesting thing about that game. I think the main theme throughout all the games is the connections aren't there yet, especially up front. They have looked like a right winger, a striker, and a left winger who are sort of just trying to do things, and they've not really come together just yet. And maybe that's what you would expect from a front 3, or there's probably got 6 options other than Jay Robinson. None of them have any confidence, so to expect them all of a sudden to go and score a load of goals is maybe difficult. But then if they're not scoring the goals, these are the ones where the confidence is supposed to come, right? So what does that then say when they go into the season? There's obviously 3 weeks left for the players to build connections. I know Will's still going to focus more on tactics now in this Girona training camp, where they're going to be with each other every day as well, so that the connections are naturally going to start building from there. But I think there's still a long way to go for the tactics and for Will Still's style to come together. But I don't think it's far too early to start worrying about things. Look at what Birmingham fans were doing. They were going mental that they beat Sevilla, and I think they've lost a couple of games to lower ranking English sides since then. So there's no point looking into pre-season results and performances too much. It's just which players can step up a little bit. And there's been a couple who've done that, and a couple who've sort of just, I forgot they were playing until you see that they're not on the pitch anymore, and you've got to do your notes and you go, oh, he's come off as he are. Didn't even notice he was on the pitch.
Yeah, there's I mean, at the end of the day, we've played lower level opposition. So, I mean, that kind of, to me anyway, makes it more difficult for the forwards, because they're often playing against low block teams, and the defenders have just got to concentrate, because obviously we're going to have the ball the majority of the time. You would have thought. Obviously, I'm surmising because as said, didn't see the games, but yeah, I mean, just a couple of things. One thing to pick up on what you've said there, it's the wide areas of the team that concern me, looking at the squad that we've got at the moment, because that's a very kind of key part of Still's kind of ethos, isn't it? Is the wide men, and So you look at it at the moment, and the choice is Robinson or Brereton Diaz on the left, and it's Edozie or Adam Armstrong on the right, which to me this might sound a bit harsh. To me, that's not good enough to go into a championship season with. So there is certainly some work that needs doing in those areas. And I guess that we may find out a little bit more about what's going on, what's going to be going on with certain players, because we've got this Spanish. I was going to say tour, but it's not really. Another two behind closed doors games against, I'll probably pronounce this wrong, Castellon and Espanyol. It's been said that we're aiming for a sort of 26-man squad, 26-man squad, and I make it at the moment we've got 31. So, I mean, we're kind of a day early for this, because there promises to be some sort of like quite significant news on Monday with regards to who gets left out of this sort of like training camp. So that's sort of something that we'll still mention in the interview after the Valenciennes game. So, you know, Steve, who do you kind of expect to miss out on the trip?
Difficult to tell, actually, because everybody has been given a fair crack in these, well, 1 plus the 2 kind of double games, really. So yeah, it's difficult to tell, because you don't know whether there is kind of a thinking within the club or within the management, at least, of, well, I know this person's going to be leaving, so therefore there's no point in me taking them to Spain. But then if they're potentially a key player, like someone like Ramsdale as a prime example, why wouldn't you take him there? Because you know that his professionalism is top notch. He sets the standard for players, and that you know that he will still be kind of the same regardless of what sort of is going on in the background in terms of a potential transfer. Whereas someone like, I don't know, I mean, pick someone out of thin air, Brereton Diaz, prime example. Is he a player that still's going to rely on next season? Is there any interest in him? If there is some interest, then maybe you actually kind of push that interest by leaving him at home. Maybe that gives you a kind of option there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of who you're actually gonna leave at home, I mean, you could draw names out of a hat, but I do suspect that we will see, like, there'll be 4 or 5 names there, and at least 3 of them will be okay. Well, they're leaving at some point in the next couple of weeks then, and that's when things will suddenly become a little bit clearer for everybody. And I mean, it helps the manager, doesn't it? Because it means that he can start working on the formation that suits the players, system and tactical little sort of interchanges and things like that. And everything kind of settles down a little bit as you head in towards these final handful of games. Yeah,
of course. I mean, there'll be players you would assume playing in these 2 friendlies who haven't been around yet. Matias Fernandez, Damion Downs will hopefully be there as well. Ronnie Edwards, you would have thought would make an appearance. So, yeah, George, you've got any sort of like insights on what you think might happen with there?
Well, I think there's a couple of players who picked up injuries in the last week. So I know Will Sill told us they're going to check the numbers and check in on them and see if they're able to go. Matsuki missed the last game with a quad injury. If he's got a bit of a knock, then when squad numbers are so tight, you're not going to take someone who's nursing an injury. The same with Tyler Diblin, got a bit of a knock against Gillingham. Flynn Downs went off against Valenciennes. You're not going to take those players if they're still carrying a little bit. I think Flynn Downs, out of the 3, you probably would still take, because you expect him to be really crucial. I'd be surprised if Harwood-Bellis goes, unless he just goes to do gym work in Spain, because we know that he's not even going to be available to play games until the start of August anyway, because of his ankle injury. So you save a spot there. There's no chance that Armel Bella-Kotchap's going to go. He's been with the under-21s every time we've seen him. So I'd be utterly baffled if he went. Charlie Taylor is one that I probably a couple of weeks ago would have said, oh, he gets left at home. But he's won the captain's armband in the 2-hour-long games he's played in the last week. So that's sort of blown up that idea in my face, because you're not going to stick the captain's armband on someone that you think in a week or 2 is going to be out the door. So I asked Will Still about it, and he says that he's reliable. He's always going to be there. I think he means in terms of the position on the pitch rather than in the squad when he says that. So he's an interesting one because you've got the 3 left backs and you've got about 4 million centre backs, but Charlie Taylor maybe fits more as a centre back considering the number of left backs that they've got, and they used a back 5 because they've got so many centre backs and had a couple of midfield injuries against Valenciennes, and that's then where he played. So yeah, I'm interested to see who goes because you've got Kai Sander as well, who could just go with the 21s. He's probably going to play some minutes.
I think he
play some minutes for them. They've had Bailey De Pepper and Moses Sesse with the squad the last 2 games, just sitting on the bench in case someone goes off injured, just to not use the ones who are going to play the next hour. Do they go? Probably not at this point. Don Ballard was obviously on the bench against Eastleigh. Don't think he's going to go, but there will be some players that he's going to have to tell that, look, you're not coming. Jan Bednarek is probably the biggest name out of those that I would suspect doesn't go because they've just got so many centre backs, and I don't think there's anyone who expects him still to be at the club.
No, I mean, I'm surprised he's still here now, to be honest. I'm surprised he's still here. I'm surprised Joe Aribo's still here. I thought they would have been sort of like trying to get those 2 out the door, but I mean, both would obviously be useful players in the Championship, but just with the nature of their contracts, and I mean, Joe's only got a year left, hasn't he? I do sort of like. I thought they would try and move him, but we've got a few players who've just got a year left, like Joe Aribo, Charlie Taylor, Ryan Fraser. I mean, there's an argument for trying to get money for them now, but it obviously wouldn't be much money for any of them. And they could all be useful next year. So I guess it's just a case of whether we as a club want to carry the wages this season in the Championship. And that's obviously the question around Aaron Ramsdale as well. I still see no way that he starts the season in goal for us. I just think there's got to be a solution found there to get those wages off the books. I'd be very, very surprised if he's still here. But
I do wonder whether that's another sort of James Ward-Prowse situation where everybody's known for months that he's going, but it takes somebody in the Premier League to kind of actually get their kind of affairs in order and actually get the thing done. Because that move to West Ham dragged on for ages, didn't it? And I can foresee a scenario where Ramsdale plays against Wrexham. And then at some point between then and the end of August, a deal's done, whether it's a loan, whether it's a permanent move. I don't know, but yeah, I can see that happening. I mean, don't forget that squad that was in place at Hillsborough on that opening night. Romeo Lavia was on the bench.
Yeah. Nathan Teller played.
Nathan
Teller played and scored.
Yeah, definitely was his goal.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just just strange the way that squad evolved so rapidly. But yeah, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if similar didn't happen again. But you would like to think that we can, even if you have to take a little bit of a haircut on fees or whatever, I think the need for us to be a little bit more certain of what we're doing this season is probably greater. Just to kind of dispel any sort of lingering issues of, are we going to make a pig's ear of this? We shouldn't do, because at the end of the day, we all saw 2 years ago what this division's about, and it should not faze us sort of in the slightest. But that first game is obviously a very big, a very public banana skin, and it's one that the club will want to get over the line, and doesn't matter how you get a result, just get the result and get it done. And move on. The makeup of the squad is going to go a long way to resolving these issues, I think.
Yeah. Well, have you got anything else you particularly want to bring up? I understand
we had the new kit launch, didn't we?
We did.
The away kit.
We did. The 1995-ish yellow and blue away kit.
95 to 97?
Yeah. So I was really disappointed they didn't bring back Mickey Evans and Jim Magilton to do the kit reveal on that, because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they used that Matt Letizia at Newcastle goal, which was kind of iconic in that it was a rare win at Newcastle. But surely the iconic win in that shirt was the 3-1 win at the City Ground.
Yeah, not the Forest. Yeah.
Basically kept us up and sent them down. That was like Easter weekend, I think, wasn't it, that season? And yeah, Magilton scored from long range, and Mickey Evans scored twice in the last 10, 15 minutes or so. I think Stuart Pearce put an under-hit back pass, I think, for one of them. That was a kind of rare one back in the mid-90s of us taking big numbers north of London. Obviously now we kind of take it for granted that we'll sell out away ends kind of up and down the country, but back then taking 3,000 to the City Ground was kind of unheard of.
Yeah, very true.
But yeah, that was I always enjoy seeing the highlights of that game. So
I think that's about all we've got for today. We're back with the season proper starting August the 3rd. Martin and Alfie will hopefully be back with us. Not that there's anything against you, George. But no, we need to talk to someone who actually gets into these pre-season friendlies. So that'll be nice. The intention is this year we'll be joined by guests from the other teams, other podcasts all the way across the Championship to learn more about their teams. We found that quite a good feature the last time we were in the Championship. It does mean that we might have to have someone from Portsmouth, but you never know. I'm sure we'll be able to find someone who we can talk to, have a conversation with. As I mentioned earlier, we're also on Patreon, where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Each of our tiers comes with its own perks, including weekly shout-outs for those patrons in our Francis Benali and Mick Shannon tiers. So thank you to Dave Melton, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Peter Montalbano, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, and James Kibbe in the Francis Benali tier. Also, thanks to Nick Reed, Dave Ernsberger, Nick Hinkston, Phil Cook, Jonathan Cooper, Colt Baker, Anthony Thompson, Matt Hall, Mike Etheridge, Phil Horstrup, Mark Littlewood, James Bobin, John Bevan, Frank Thorpe, and Jono in our Mick Shannon tier. Thanks to Steve and George for joining us today. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you again next time.